I can help spread them. So
But you can
I
see
give them
how
away.
you can see how much work you had to do to just get the milkweed to, you know, to sprout. A lot of people aren't willing to do all that work from a seed. I mean, I know I wouldn't
Right.
be good at it. I'd much rather get a plant from someone and then watch it, you know, sprout out other plants.
Now, would you be interested in getting starts? Maybe they're not mature, but they've got a good start on them that, you know, if you plant them, they're going to grow.
Right. No, I like that.
Oh, okay. Because that's right now what I'm trying to do. I've got some of those containers that I'm bringing Monday, I'll be bringing back, and I'm going to fill them full of dirt and I'm going to put on the seeds. And I'm also going to take my Major Wheeler honeysuckle vine because it's doing great, but I don't want it to get too big. So I'm going to try to start. I read online that you can get starts from it. So I'm going to try that. I'm going to try to get some starts and grow them. And if they do good, then I'm going to start giving those away too. So we'll see. Keep your fingers crossed.
Tomorrow,
And the hummingbirds. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
tomorrow, I was wondering if you would get 10 or 20 plants of the meadow phlox for Louisville Nature Center, since you live so close. And then you could, on your way home, instead of actually you even having to do the Cherokee Park maybe, or on top of, no, actually we could get Mark Yost to dig up the phlox, but if you would take it to LNC and put it by the shed on the right-hand side, it's back on the right side of the building. I'm not sure if you're familiar. There's usually a wheelbarrow
yes.
there. If you could drop it off for Rosemary, then we'd have that little part taken care of. That's the only thing she wanted. And I said, well, if that's all you want, don't waste your time driving all the way out there and digging it up. We'll have someone dig it up for you and take it to you.
Okay.
But I think Mark's not going to dig anything for himself, so it makes sense for him to
Oh, okay.
do that.
Well, I definitely would like to get some for myself. One moment, I've just dropped my pen. To get stuff for myself, but I also want to get it for, if it's the Nature Center, that's fine. If it's Cherokee Park, that's fine. So the splitting was perfect for me. I thought that was very nice. Honestly, to say, you know, first star, dig for yourself, second R, you know, dig for the wildflower area or Louisville Nature Center. So I thought, well, I like that. I like that. So
Good. We'll see how it works.
I'm on board.
Well, we love your energy, Deanie.
Oh, thank you.
We love your energy.
We do.
Oh, thank you. I love doing it. I'm hooked on nature, as you can tell.
Yeah.
And I love learning about it, and I like participating. I like getting my hands dirty.
Mm-hmm.
Well, so you were going to talk about butterflies.
Yeah, let's run through this thing. And if, you know, I would like to do this to a bigger audience, and y'all can, I'm interested in getting feedback from you. This is material that I got from Doug Tallamy. He's my hero, and he wrote Bringing Nature Home and a couple other good books. And let me give you the overview. There are, I don't know, almost 50, there are about 70 slides. Might not be able to get through them all, but let me, I'm going to share my screen with you first.
Okay.
So share screen.
Do I need to do anything on my end?
No, I don't think so. Can you see that?
Oh, yeah. Cool.
So this is 70 slides, but I'm going to give you an overview so we'll know where we're going with it. And then if we don't get to all of it, that's okay too. So we all love native plants, and we love what native plants do for nature. We love that they attract bees, butterflies, and birds. And so Doug Tallamy is the one who really gives you a good framework for knowing which are some of the most productive native plants, including some of the most productive native trees. And this is how that works. So we'll talk about how do you tell a productive tree from one that's not. We're going to look at, give an example, like a chickadee. We're going to give an example of how many caterpillars a chickadee needs to eat. We're going to look at, you know, what insects are food for what? Insects are food for all these different things, so that's why they're important. But what do insects eat? So we're talking about the food chain here. What do insects eat? And then insects in turn provide food for other things, especially birds, but also other insects. And when we get to the oak, then we're getting into what are some of the most productive native plants. And oak is number one. There are over 300 genuses in Jefferson County. This is all specific to Jefferson County. And so we're going to talk about oak. We're going to talk about Virginia creeper. We're going to talk about walnut. We're going to talk about maple, elm. And so that's what, you know, all these different plants are bird food. And then I say here, where does bird food come from? We're going to talk about the white-eyed vireo and how many different types of caterpillars it eats. And what do those caterpillars in turn eat? Because caterpillars are leaf-eating insects. And so that brings us to the end. That's 78 slides. And I want you to stop me at any point and ask questions or make comments or give feedback, okay?
Mm-hmm.
All right. So let's start with the first slide. This is a list of some of the most productive trees and plants in Jefferson County. And I get all this from the National Wildlife Federation website. I've made this list. So oaks are number one. Plums and cherries are 290. Plums and cherries are second, and then willows, then birches, maples, hickories, aspen, cottonwood actually, crab apples, cranberries and blueberries, pines. And this number out to the side, this 346, says that that's the number of caterpillar species that an oak supports in Jefferson County. And so that's 346 for oaks, 290 for plums and cherries, 239 for willows, 223 for birch. And this information's only been available for about the last 5 years at the most. Any questions so far?
Mm-mm. So,
Can you see it okay?
yeah, the oak, you're saying 346 different types of caterpillars?
That's
species,
correct.
But it's not, okay.
Yes.
That's a lot.
Yeah. Then we'll get to some examples later on, but the point is that these animals have very specialized relationships. I mean, the caterpillars have specialized relationships with the plants that they eat. So some caterpillars can eat oaks and hickories and beeches, but they can't eat just anything. So if what they eat is not there, then they can't live. And if there's more of what they eat, then the better they can live. And the more their populations can thrive.
And is that for all oaks?
Regardless of like I've got a white swamp oak.
Right.
So would that be in relation to that?
All native oaks, and a swamp white oak is native. So there are non-native oaks. I've never seen them, but there is such thing as an Italian oak. And there are non-native maples. There's a Norway maple that's very undesirable. It's very invasive. There's native and non-native types of honeysuckle. There's even native and non-native types of milkweed. There's native and non-native pines, native and non-native dogwoods. But the important thing is that it's native. So oak is a genus.
Right.
And a genus is a group of species. Most of these genuses have multiple species within them, and you want to select native species within the genus.
Okay.
So productive trees, let's compare some productive and non-productive trees. So this is like this slide. I'm going to go ahead and slideshow from current slide. So this is an experiment that Dr. Tallamy did on July 25th of 2014, and he counted the species that were visible on this white oak. And this is the count that he came up with. These are the ones that were visible without a ladder. So there might have been more at the top, but the ones that he could see with the naked eye without a ladder, altogether 410 on this oak tree. Compare that with, okay, black cherry, also very good, but Bradford pear, not very good. Only one caterpillar species. And then burning bush, 4 caterpillars, 1 species, not very good. Not very many caterpillars. So I'm going to back up a little bit. This white oak, very productive. It produces a lot of caterpillars. And this black cherry produces a lot of caterpillars. But the Bradford pear, not very many because it's non-native. And the burning bush, not very many. It's non-native. So that's a comparison that shows the stark difference between a productive tree and a non-productive tree in terms of the so when an oak tree produces a lot of caterpillars, that for one thing, that's bird food. For another thing, those caterpillars, if they survive to adulthood, they become moths and butterflies, and they become pollinators and perpetuate their species. Any comments or questions on that?
Mm-mm.
Okay,
Nope.
so let's look at a chickadee. How many caterpillars, like when a chickadee is making baby chickadees, how many caterpillars do you think they need to raise a nest of baby chickadees?
A lot, because
Yeah.
we have a bird house out here that has a family, and she is nonstop going back and forth.
Yeah, that's what
She's
I'm
busy.
talking about. That's what I'm talking about.
Yep.
Yeah. So how many caterpillars does a mating pair of chickadees bring back into the nest over a 16-day period that they're in the nest? Every 3 minutes, you talk about they're nonstop. Every 3 minutes, they're bringing something back to the nest, both parents. In 30 minutes, they bring back 30 caterpillars, according to this experiment that Dr. Tallamy did.
I agree.
Mhm.
I agree with it.
And so they're foraging from 6 a.m. to 8 p.m.
Hmm.
In 3 hours, they brought back 17 different species.
Mm-mm.
And the count is 400 to 500 per day, or 6,000 to 9,000 over the 16-day period. So it takes upwards of 6,000 caterpillars to feed one nest of chickadees. And that's just one pair of one species. So you don't want just one pair of one species, you want many different pairs of many different species. And so you can see how, if you're going to have a fully functioning ecosystem, it'd be easy that you're going to need literally over 1 million insects, over 1 million caterpillars to feed all of the birds that could possibly make a nest where you are.
Mm-hmm.
So here's that chart again that shows the different, and this is, I'll give you the full list. I'll give you the top 100 when we're done, but this is the top 20 or 25. And you can see most of them are trees. But when you get down to number 50, number 60, 70, 80, 90, a lot of those are going to be wildflowers, but the top few are trees. So that's why it's important for our landscape to include trees, bushes, herbaceous plants, and grasses. All of them are important. So insects are food for what? Hummingbirds. Like 75% or more of a hummingbird's diet is insects. They'll eat the sugar water that you put out, but mainly what they need to live, and especially to reproduce, is insects. And that's where native plants come in. So spiders eat insects, frogs and toads eat insects, salamanders eat insects, skinks eat insects, bats eat insects, mice eat insects. They'll eat seeds if they have to, but they eat a lot of
yeah,
insects
they
if
do.
they can. Yeah. Skunks eat insects. Possums eat insects. In fact, they're good at, I've heard possums are good at keeping deer ticks away.
Yeah.
Raccoons eat insects. Foxes eat insects. A fourth of a red fox's diet is insects. And a fourth of a black bear's diet is insects.
Wow.
That may include the honey that they eat from that's produced by the bees.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering.
Right.
Yeah.
This is a sharp-shinned hawk, and it doesn't eat insects directly, but it's a bird predator, and birds eat insects. So its diet is essentially, it depends on insects for its diet because its prey, it depends on insects. Also, I've heard that, well, Dr. Talamy says that 40 or 50% of fish protein comes from insects. That include, like the fish will eat larvae from dragonflies and
Oh, yeah.
and things like that. And garter snakes don't eat insects, or maybe they do, but they also eat frogs and toads, which in turn eat insects. So they depend on insects. So a world without insects is a world without biological diversity. And a world without biological diversity is a world without humans, according to E.O. Wilson and Common Sense. So what do insects eat? So do you know what kind of type of insect that is and what kind of plant it is?
That's a monarch, isn't it?
Right. It's a monarch
caterpillar.
And it's eating,
Probably milkweed of some
milkweed.
kind.
I think it's a common milkweed.
Is it?
Yeah.
Looks like it.
Okay. Yeah.
And these are, you know what kind of butterfly that is?
Trying to remember the name of those. I've got them in my yard. I take pictures of them all the time. It's not a filiary. What is it?
Yeah, it is.
Is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's
I wasn't sure.
spangled fritillary.
Yep. I have those.
And I took this picture. Do you know what plant it's on?
It's on the swamp milkweed, isn't it?
That's what I was going to say. It looked like the blooms look like swamp weed, and so did the leaf, but I wasn't sure. Is that what it? Yeah, that's what the blooms look like.
Yeah, the blooms look like it, but I believe that's a common milkweed.
Okay.
Oh, is it?
Yeah. I took that picture in Oldham County at Meadowview Farms in Oldham County. But the fritillaries, the butterflies, see, they're nectaring on milkweed, but they need violets. Their violets is their host plant. Their caterpillars eat violets. So let's look at some of the different plants and what caterpillars they feed. And I'm going to cheat a little bit. So there's oak. So that's a spun glass oak slug, and it eats oak. Possibly some other things, but oak is one of the things.
Never seen one of those before.
Right. I haven't either, but it is a definitely, yeah. Now this is let me see. This is a variable oak leaf caterpillar.
Huh.
This is a red humped oak worm. This is a pink striped oak worm. This is a pleasant dagger moth.
I get those.
Do you?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
I've had those. I've got pictures of them.
Great.
I take pictures of anything that enters my yard.
Awesome.
Try to. So yeah.
This is a greater oak dagger moth.
Huh.
Streaked dagger moth. afflicted dagger moth.
Daggone.
These are all Doug Tallamy's pictures.
Oh, okay.
White blotched heterocampa.
Now, isn't there something else that looks like that? Is it a hornworm?
I'm thinking.
It attacks tomatoes and
Oh, tobacco
I'm sorry, I
hornworm?
didn't mean
Yeah,
it.
yeah, tobacco
Yes.
hornworm. Mhm.
Okay.
Right.
It looks a lot like, I think it's more green
Right.
than what this
Yeah.
one is, but
Yeah.
okay. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, please do. This is good.
I like its little feet.
Yeah. It kind of.
I did a bad thing. It was
Eating my plants, and I gently got it off the plant and transplanted it somewhere else. I thought, you're not eating my tomatoes, sorry. And what I'm concerned about on those two, not to sound gross, but the one that was attacking my tomato plant had a lot of little maggots on its back. That's another reason I got rid of it.
Okay, those are probably, those could be the eggs of a Burkhanid wasp.
Oh, that's right. I read something about that.
And that is the predator that controls your hornworms.
You're right. I read about that. Now that you say that, I read about that. Okay, sorry.
No, and that's one good reason to have a diversity of caterpillars, because that Burkhanid wasp also feeds off of a few other caterpillars that we're going to see in just a minute, the sphinx moth caterpillars. So the sphinx moth caterpillars feed on Virginia creeper. So if you have Virginia creeper, then you could potentially support sphinx moth caterpillars, and that way you support the Burkhanid wasp, and the Burkhanid wasp is then available to control your tobacco hornworms.
Okay.
But we're still on oak. This is the oblique heterocampa. This is a red-lined panapoda. And this is the laugher. And those are only a few of the caterpillars that oak supports, because oak supports over 300 species, probably 400 or more caterpillars in our region. But let's look at Virginia creeper. So this is the Abbott sphinx moth that will eat Virginia creeper, but that doesn't look like Virginia creeper to me. But the Abbott sphinx does feed on Virginia creeper. So does the Pandora sphinx, and so does the hog sphinx. All feed on Virginia creeper. Now let's go to walnut. So walnut looks like that, and there's the walnut sphinx. There's the gray-edged bomoloka.
You just answered one of my questions.
You've seen that?
I had one of these last year. I had one of these, and I looked it up on the internet, and I never could find it. Now I know what it is. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. You're welcome. Here's the bride. Now let's go to maple. That's what a sugar maple looks like anyway. Looks like a sugar maple to me. The Plagatus inchworm, the green striped maple worm, the retarded dagger moth. Now let's go to elm. That's what an elm leaf looks like. It also looks similar. See, this is an American elm of some sort. It looks similar to a Chinese elm or to a Zelkova. But a Chinese elm and Zelkova are going to be inedible to our insects. But if you have a native elm, then you've got the four-horned sphinx feeds off of that. And the double-toothed prominent feeds off of that. So that's the specialized relationships. That's why it's good to have a variety of native plants and trees, so that variety of native plants and trees supports a variety of insects, so that that variety of insects then supports a variety of other things. And plus, the more plant diversity you have, the more insect diversity you have. The more insect diversity you have, the more stability there is in the food supply of all the things that eat insects. And so where does bird food come from? Well, let's look at the white-eyed vireo. This is an experiment. I'm sure Dr. Talmy had an electronic camera, motion-sensitive camera set up. This is from his home place. So white-eyed vireo is coming back to its nest. And there you have your blinded sphinx moth. That's a blinded sphinx moth. And it, that which in turn came from a black cherry. Then it's got caught eating a chestnut schizura, which comes from Viburnum dentatum. Then it got caught eating a drab prominent, which comes from sycamore. Then it got caught eating an 8-spotted forester, which comes from grape. Then it got caught eating a lunate zale, which comes from black cherry.
Oh my goodness.
Then it got caught eating a tufted bird dropping moth, which also comes from black cherry. Then it got caught eating a spicebush swallowtail, which comes from spicebush. And there's some happy little white-eyed vireo chicks, because they're well fed, because Dr. Talmy has a diversity of native plants on his home place. And that's where all that comes from. So that is the end of the presentation. And there's more where that came from. If we want to have a similar presentation on another day.
Good.
So
Yeah,
this,
very interesting, very informative.
good, thank you. This is a more complete list. This is a document that I can send you. In fact, let me just go ahead and copy that and send it to you in the chat. I'm going to stop the share for just a minute. I'm going to send this in the chat. And you can copy that and get access to this very document. Now I'm going to share the screen again. So here's the document. It's 1 through 100. All the way down here, you've got bee balm at number 100. Now, this is 100 of the over 300 genera or genuses of native plants in our region. I'm going to see if I can get rid of this over here. Let's see, view.
Full screen.
I can probably do that too. Green print layout. Let's see, mode viewing. Anyway, I think this is. Oh wait, view full screen. Yeah, there we go. So this is 100 of the 300 genuses in Jefferson County. They're very specific to Jefferson County because this is pulled from a database. The database is available at nwf.org/native plant finder. And it's a little bit clunky and cumbersome, but I've done some of the work for you of pulling out these numbers. And so oaks, plums and cherries, willows, birch, maple, hickory, aspen, apple, cranberry, blueberry, pine, elm, alder, basswood, walnut, ash, blackberry, dewberry. If you keep going on down, there's spicebush is number 93. You have milkweed is somewhere in here, maybe 70 something. Milkweed is 78. Pawpaw is in there, number 80.
80.
You've got mulberry, but it needs to be a native mulberry. You got yarrow, but it needs to be a native yarrow. Cattail needs to be native. Buckthorn, there's both native and non-native buckthorn. A Carolina buckthorn is native. Bee balm is great for nectar, but it's
Mm-hmm.
also a good host plant. It hosts the caterpillars.
Mm-hmm.
Over here, witch hazel ranks pretty high. Persimmon ranks pretty high. Goldenrod ranks pretty high for a flower. Because so the top few are all trees. You have to get down to number 20 before you have a bush. And then there's some more trees. Dogwood's a tree. And then you have ironwood's a tree. Spruce, grape is a vine. Witch hazel's a bush. Goldenrod is a forb. Strawberry is a vine. It needs to be native strawberry. Sunflower is a forb. Joe Pye weed is like herbaceous. It's almost a bush, but it's not woody, I don't think, is it?
No, I've got a real large Joe Pye weed in my one of my flower areas.
So here's violet's number 48. So violet supports 27 species of caterpillars. So it's a very small plant. And, you know, some people are trying to get rid of their violets. That's a weed.
Oh, I know.
Now, honeysuckle is on here, but that does not include your non-native honeysuckles like Japanese honeysuckle or bush honeysuckle. It includes your coral honeysuckle.
Now, where I'm coming to terms with honeysuckle and invasive vines, the area I adopted is full of the honeysuckle bushes and some invasive vines. And I saved 2 trees, and there's a wildflower area. I went ahead and pulled all the vine. But then I started thinking, because the other day there's, it's a mulberry tree, and I have to identify the other tree, but it's coming up under a honeysuckle bush. So I started trimming the honeysuckle bush back to bring light to the other trees. But in doing so, the bees were buzzing around me like crazy. So I stopped. I thought, you know, the frost took a lot of the spring blooms on the trees, like the black lotus tree and my trumpet vines and my Rose of Sharon and other bushes and trees I have in my backyard. The frost killed the early blooms. So I thought, who am I to really be taken away from these bees right now?
Right.
So I've got to learn, or what I'm coming to terms with, is when to and when not to disturb nature, because I don't want to take away from any insects or birds that are getting from the honeysuckle bushes right now, because everything else died with the frost. So I'm thinking, okay, on the vines, if they're growing up a dead tree, the tree's dead, and I see it's dead, I'm going to leave them alone for now, but I will cut them back if they're on a live tree or if I see them suffocating other flowers, other wildflowers.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I'm trying to deal with. Then along the bank of the creek on our property, the majority is honeysuckle bush. And eventually I would like to take the majority of it down and plant something native there.
I'd be happy to help with that.
Well, I would love to have someone identify what trees I do have over here. I do know I've got black locust trees or lotus trees. I know I've got that. I've got a lot of those. Absolutely love them. But the other trees I'm not really sure of. I'm not familiar. Like there's one tree that was a volunteer and now it's pretty good size. And I think it might be a Kentucky coffee tree, but I'm not sure. And I've got tree books. I go on the internet and sometimes it's like it could be multiple trees, the shape of the leaf or something. It could be that it could be any one of 3 or 4 trees. So I would love to identify what I've got growing around me, and that will help me benefit nature.
Right.
Sorry, I didn't mean to get off.
No, not at all. Not at all.
But I like this list, and I believe I've seen this list from you before on one of our walks.
Probably so.
Yeah, I like this.
So
And it might help.
Go ahead.
It might help people determine, okay, I was thinking about getting this or that, and I see that this one benefits more.
Mhm.
So maybe I'm going to go with this bush than getting this bush that doesn't benefit anything or benefits only a few. So that's helpful.
Mhm. One thing Dr. Talamy has observed is that in any given biome, the top 5% of genuses support 75% of the leaf-eating insects, or at least the caterpillars. So the top 5% in this list is about 17 or 18 is the top 5%. So if we plant as much as we can of this top 5%, then we'll be providing habitat for 75% of the caterpillars. And then we can go from there. But since we have limited time, limited money, we need to plant as much as possible of the top 5%, the top 20 or so, 17, 18, 20, somewhere around in there. So to me, and what Dr. Talamy will say is that not all native plants are equal. Some are more powerful than others. And we wouldn't be having this conversation if we had unlimited time, unlimited money, and didn't have a real urgent situation to deal with in terms of loss of biodiversity. But we have a dramatic loss of biodiversity. So we need to plant as much as we can of the best native plants. And sometimes you're going to look at this list and sometimes you're not going to look at this list, but it's good to, like you said, it's good to know that if I have a choice between things on here, I'm going to choose the ones that rank higher. It's also good to know that the reason non-natives are bad, not that all non-natives are bad, but the reason non-natives cost you something is that their numbers are 0. With a few exceptions, only a few exceptions. So crab apples, for one thing, it doesn't seem to matter whether crab apples are native or not. Or you have rue, carrots, parsley, and fennel as a genus that like carrots are non-native, but apparently one of the swallowtails, maybe your giant swallowtail, is able to eat that as a host plant. But that's just one of the very few exceptions. For the most part, you need natives to feed caterpillars. And so
I know that.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No,
the swallowtail gravitate towards your bronze fennel.
Okay, really?
I've got some of that growing in one of my areas, and every year I see 8 caterpillars.
8?
Yeah, at least 8.
At least
and 8. Of course, some of them don't make it because I have a lot of paper wasps, and they love them. So, but it's another thing I'm coming to terms with, like, okay, you got to step back and let Mother Nature run its course. You can't save everything. So to my horror, I sit there and I think, oh, watch them as they sting them and then they take off with them. But yeah, the bronze fennel, I've had a lot of success with swallowtails, getting swallowtail caterpillars.
Mm-hmm.
That's one. I know one of the things. And deal. I think deal. They like deal also.
Okay, yeah. Wow.
I
You've
was
learned a
looking at
lot
your.
from observation.
Oh yeah. I mean, I didn't know anything. I mean, I bought the books. I go on the internet, but just observing, I have found I've learned so much. And working with you on stuff, I continue to learn, and I love it. I love learning. And I'm sitting here looking at this list, and I'm thinking, well, I've got that. Oh, really? That many? If it helps that many, and I've got that. Oh, look how many. Oh, well, I'll have to get some more of that. So that's why I'm saying I think it's in perspective for people when they see. A lot of people have black eyes and brown eyes, Susan, and then they see this and they think, oh, look how many I'm helping, you know. And there's other plants on here that I was seeing, and I think it's very helpful. And I think it's helpful too to identify, like you were saying, what's native and some's not native. Uh, and I was guilty at the beginning that I would see plants, flowers, and think they're beautiful, and I'd plant them thinking without researching that I'd plant them and that's what's going to feed my butterflies and attract things. Well, it didn't. It didn't attract anything. It was just pretty. Well, then I started reading and learning and planning based on what, you know, birds were attracted to, what butterflies were attracted to. And now I'm even trying to plant for dragonflies because I love dragonflies.
Oh, yeah.
And,
Well, what are they like?
I don't really know. I've read some things online. There are certain plants they like, but I'm not really sure. That's why I was wanting to build a pond. But I do know that for some reason, when my lilies die back and they have the tall stems, it attracts dragonflies for some reason. I don't know if it's because it serves as a good perch or what for them to, you know, to get insects. But I'll see like 2 or 3 dragonflies at a time on my lilies after they have died back, and I leave the stalks. I never cut anything back until wintertime. I leave all the stalks because I know insects use them. And that birds use them for perches to catch bugs, insects. So, but I'm trying to learn more about the dragonfly because I'm very interested in them.
Great. Well, that's all I've got.
Oh, very good, very good, very very interesting. So I think it hits home. It's a very informative for people that are trying to decide what they want to plant.
Right.
There are a lot of people that want to do good. They want to help nature and stuff. They just don't know where to start.
Right.
Now, I also think it's good that's another reason I want to start with the native seeds is a lot of people might not be able to afford to go out and buy a lot of natives, but if they learn about different groups that do swaps, or even if we have extra seeds and just give them away, make little packets of seeds and say, here, start these, you know, that might help too.
Right.
So, but I'll, you know, I want to contribute in any way I can. So.
But it helps to have you as an audience, and also it helps to get feedback. I've been trying to teach this material for like 3 or 4 years, and as often as not, I just don't know what people are thinking.
Oh, okay.
It helps to know what people are thinking.
Yeah, and I've even found that with my neighbors now. The gentleman I'm doing the fairy garden for, he's pretty much told me to do whatever I want in his yard, and I have, and continue to do so. But he had bought box plants, box store plants too, and they all died. And so I've taken my natives and planted them over there, and they've done wonderful. And it's right by the creek. And then the neighbor right next to me, she wasn't, she likes flowers and stuff, but she wasn't into natives and stuff. She was buying pretty flowers to put in window boxes. Well, now I've talked to her, and I'm going to start planting native in her yard. And then my neighbor next to me, which I would love for you all to meet because they're birders. And
Yeah.
they go to the different parks. And even here, he told me he heard a prairie warbler. And he's seen, a white crest something. Forgive me, I can't. But when he sees something in our area, he'll come out to the fence and he'll say, "Oh, I seen this," or "Guess what was in your yard today?" And I'll say, "What?" And he'll tell me, and I get all excited. But they have 2 small children, and they planted a rain garden, and I've been supplying her with native plants. And so her 2 small children get out there with her, and they dig and plant. They're learning about butterflies and insects, and we found some dead, well, of course they were dead, cicada shells in my yard, and she asked if she could have them. I said, "Oh, please, take them." And she took them to her little boy, and they learned about cicadas. So, I'm so fortunate to have the neighbors I have, because they're interested in what
Right.
I'm interested in. And so that's very helpful. So we have birders that can help me, understand the birds that I'm not familiar with. And then I have my other neighbor that's telling me, "Yes, plant whatever you want, whatever I help, or just do what you want. Let me know what you need." And so I'm very fortunate.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to get a corridor going, and we're going to see all kinds of insects and birds and critters, and I'll try not to interfere as much as I can
Yeah. Right.
with the squirrels and the raccoons.
Right. All right. Well, we got to run along. Let's talk again.
Okay. Oh, yes, please. And I will see you tomorrow. And I'm probably going to get there. I'll park at that new Song Christian Fellowship Center.
Okay.
So we'll hook up tomorrow morning, and I've got your cell phone, and you've got mine, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Thanks,
Well,
Dee.
you look comfortable.
Thanks.
Well, thank you all for
Thank you.
inviting me, and it was very informative, and I look forward to the next one.
Sounds good. Talk to you later.
Have a blessed evening.
All right, you too. Bye-bye.
Bye.